Now, if somebody had called me a quote unquote Islamophobe just a couple of days ago, I probably would have taken some level of offense to that statement. I would have looked to stand up for myself or essentially to articulate my complete perspective on the issue. But today's no longer that day. I now accept that label. Now, here's the thing I've come to understand about the label Islamophobic or Islamophobe. It's two words, right? There's Islam, which is the religious, social, political ideology, and there is phobe or phobia, which essentially means fear. Therefore, there is a fear of this specific ideology. Would I say that I am afraid of this ideology? To that, I can only say yes. Now, it turns out that one of my all-time heroes, Sir Winston Churchill, happened to also have this same fear. Now, his fear was as rational as many of our own fears of this, dare I say, dangerous ideology. And so, literally as of yesterday, I came across this chapter in his autobiography. And I want to take a moment to write this or read this to y'all. I'm not writing a damn thing. All right. So this reads, civilization is confronted with militant Mohammedism. So it hadn't even, gone into the realm of Islam in the way that I guess we know it today. It was the same ideology, same religion, same tactics per se, but Mohammedism is the way that they refer to it. The forces of progress clash with those of reaction. The religion of blood and war is face to face with that of peace. Luckily, the religion of peace is usually the better armed. On the northwest frontier and soon again in the Sudan, Churchill saw Islamic fundamentalism up close. It was a form of fanaticism that in many key features, its sheer implausibility, contempt for Christianity, opposition to liberal Western values. Where have we heard that before? Addiction to violence. Interesting. Demand for total allegiance and so on was not unlike the political fanaticism that he was to encounter 40 years later. Wait for it. None of the three British prime ministers of the 1930s, Ramsay MacDonald, Stanley Baldwin, and Neville Chamberlain, had personally encountered such extremism in their personal lives, and they were tragically slow to discern the nature of schmaltzy ideology. Now, this is something I have hopefully done an okay job at doing, which is to draw the parallels between the Islamic. There's a danger in using, fundamentalism, because technically Islam itself, the ideology, is the fundamentals. What we're seeing expressed in the most quote unquote extremist ways, that's the ideology. That's all there is to it. That's it. That's by the book, right? Those who don't engage in such behaviors, those who aren't willing to explode themselves on a train full of innocent people, those are the ones who are seen as not necessarily aligning with their jihad or aligning with the holy war, aligning with the overall mission of, expansion of Islam throughout the entire known and unknown world. Simple as that. And so hopefully I've done an okay job at drawing the parallels between that and the schmaltzy ideology. Now, there's a video that I'm still trying to find a way how to put this together in order for YouTube to not take it down for whatever given reason or to demonetize it, which then, disallows it from being shown to as many people as possible. It's kind of how this thing works, right? It's not just about, the creator getting paid through ad revenue. It's also, they might not show y'all the damn video because it has no ads on it. And therefore, it's bad for their business. So there's a video that essentially draws the parallels between Islam and the schmaltzy regime and the relationship between the two. The little mustache man's relationship to the Islamic Brotherhood. And so Sir Winston Churchill, was able to see this in his youth up front, right? He was sent on these, military missions throughout the world. And so he engaged with these individuals. Well, at least where I'm at right now in his story is when he is in Sudan. And Sudan is, to this very day, an Islamic hellhole. This is according to likely anybody who lives there who is not willing to submit to Islam. Absolutely. If you're a Christian in Sudan, your life is forever in danger. There is no safe place, a safe space for you. That's the sort of environment that it always has been, and it is to this day. Again, in the words of Churchill, contempt for Christianity was blatant even at that time. And dare I say, any other religion or non-religion that does not align with themselves. Now, the reason I bring this up is because, my content has sort of taken this direction of, it's not just content for content's sake. When I started doing what I'm doing now, I didn't necessarily know what direction this was going. To be honest with y'all, I was avoiding this. I avoided this like the plague. I would run from it in the same way many of us run from our calling in life, right? I'm sure you find yourself in a place, or maybe you're there now, where you're afraid to fully dive into the thing that you're called to do, the thing that God has placed upon your heart. And so I would avoid this microphone, and then I would come back to it. I just simply had to be expressed. And I thought it was just for the sake of expression. I never knew that, I would be called in the same way we're all called. I'm not some special person, some special prophet or whatever. We're all human, and we all have our purpose, and it's all equally measured, no matter how it shows itself, right? The calling to be a mother is the same, it's the same importance of somebody who's called to run a Fortune 500 or of tens of thousands of people. In God's eyes, they're equal. And truth be told, motherhood might be just a little more important, if you catch what I'm throwing, right? Fundamentally speaking, if we didn't have that work being done, then we're not here. I digress. So, I never realized I'd be getting into this space. I never realized that the information that I would soon be attracted to, because I felt called to different stuff. I felt called to pick this book and this specific individual. How many men, great men who've done, things that are remembered for all the time, could I have picked? But yet, for some reason, Churchill stood out, right? For some reason, I've been attracted to the work of Dr. Thomas Sowell. And these things have resonated with me at a cellular level. And I've done my best to express these things. And, it's gone from not just being content to speaking to people and trying to be of value per se, but it is of telling the absolute truth, sometimes uncomfortable truth. And, as some would say, we're born for a time like this, right? There's no coincidence in the time in which we're born and the purpose in which we serve. And so what I feel I'm called to is to simply wake folks up in the way that a Churchill was trying to wake the folks around him up. There was a time when he was not seen as a hero. He was not seen as, some remarkable man who we remember through history. Obviously, they're trying to do the revisionist history today and, even have him out to be the villain and have the little mustache man to be, the true ally, the man we should have backed and we should have stood with. That sort of nonsense, right? It's like, to hell with the whole Western civilization being destroyed utterly. We should stand up with this guy because, it's far more entertaining to be a groyper than it is to be a sane individual. It's far easier to, blame Jews for everything as opposed to looking at your own life, right? So, getting back to that statement at hand, as I was reading that last night, it struck me because, and actually, I shared it with my lady right before she went to sleep. Sometimes I do get on her like that, and she's incredible. She's as smart as all get out. So, these are things that are as of interest to her as much as anything else. And I read that passage out, And before I even say the last statement of, how these leaders didn't necessarily see the threat of Churchill, didn't see the threat that Churchill was trying to bring to their awareness. They didn't understand that this schmatzy thing wasn't just some passing phase, that soon enough it would make its way to their very own doorstep. And, when I look at where we are today and I see how Islam is essentially having its like third wave of global conquering would be too soon to call, right? Because they haven't necessarily conquered, but there is a push, the likes of which we have not seen in a long time, right? Where Islam has made its way into the Western world, it's made its way into Europe, and it's being accepted openly by, the quote unquote powers that be, the governments at hand, etc. All these folks who are afraid of being labeled as racist, right? Riddled with Western white guilt. And some, of course, are corrupted and, they're aligning with these things, but with these entities and these ideas. But I see this push happening. And to me, it's sort of clear as day. And maybe it's because I have the advantage or disadvantage of, being born into a dictatorship, being born into a country where there was no due process. There was no, your freedom of speech necessarily. There were things you could and could not do based upon what the ruling class or the ruling individual put into motion, put into law individually. Yeah, sure, you were made to feel as if you had choice, but you really did not. And, my father did everything he could to get us into better conditions and circumstances. And so I have this perspective of, when I see danger, when I see something that is threatening the other, when I see something that is not congruent with the other, it's relatively easy for me to make that distinction. Not because I'm special or I've been given some special knowledge, but because I'm connecting dots. And again, I've been looking for ways to ground my message as much as possible, because it's not one to induce and create fear, right? I do believe that we're not given a spirit of fear. We're given a sound mind, which is the opposite of fear. So what is it then? I would say it's discernment. I'd say it's the willingness to be in the light. And, light, sometimes we think it's just airy fairy, la, big grins, big smiles. No, light is an exposer. Light brings what is in the dark out of darkness, right? When God called for there to be light, all was revealed. Things are illuminated. I turn the light in this room off completely, pitch black. I turn it back on. Same things are here that were in the dark, is just now they're being revealed. We can more easily see them. And so that's what I look to do. And, I'm not sitting here to say I have every single answer of everything we need to do. I don't think anybody does. Again, look into the story of Churchill. I actually got an opportunity to watch the film The Darkest Hour, I believe it was, with my lady over the weekend. I said, you know what? It's finally time to get into this. And, one of my guys is deeply connected to the individuals who created that film. And so I said, it's about time for me to actually watch this thing. Stop putting it on the back burner of my list. And it was a reminder of the humanity of each person, even those who were called at the highest levels, like Winston Churchill. And sometimes you don't have the answers, but you just know that you can't surrender. You can't quit. You can't stop. And so to bring a full circle back to this thing of, Islamophobia, this is going to be used. It's going to be used as we continue to move deeper and deeper into the truth, as more lights are being flicked on. It's going to be used as a mechanism. In the same way, words like racism were weaponized in order for certain people to recoil, to step back, to stop taking action. Okay, I don't want to be offensive. I don't be racist, so I'm just going to say nothing. They call you, a transphobe. You just simply wanted to protect your children from being violated, from, being consumed by this evil. Oh, no, you got to, oh, you don't care about women's rights because you're not willing to stand behind those who want to, take our young's life. And so you're marked with that wording of, intolerant or misogynistic, or, it's not your body, my body, whatever it may be. The same tactic is being used here. The only difference is, and again, all evil is equally aligned, equally paralleled. But when you have the sort of evil that looks to make its way to your door, into your house, right? There are individuals who are alive today who remember that because they're currently going through that. That's why I continue to look to the Jewish people, to look to Israel. It hasn't been 2 years since evil's most complete manifestation has shown itself at their doorstep. And we seem to have forgotten that not 30 years ago, back in 2001, same thing was at our doorstep. And of course, 1,000 different narratives were created and we fell into the fantasies. And it's not to say that there may not have been some level of, corruption or whatever it may be. But there is a reality to say that this very same evil that was diagnosed back in the 1900s or early 1900s, the same evil that was diagnosed hundreds of years ago, the same one that, dare I say, Christians who actually still had a backbone stood up against and fought. That very same one is now making its way, and it's doing so in a very different, more coverted way. And just because something is coverted doesn't mean that it has lost its true core essence. Do you think it's any better if the little mustache man had come in knocking, or if he had a battering ram to knock your door down? Do you think it would have been any different for you and your family? Those who would not submit, do you think it would have been any easier for you because he came in and offered you up something and pretended to be friendly with you? You're going to be labeled an Islamophobe. You're going to be labeled as intolerant. It's already happening, with the Pakistani R-word gangs over there in the UK. So many people who try to bring awareness to this are, to hell with awareness. Some of the people who have been victims of this, the many women, I did an interview with I didn't do the interview, but the guys over at Trigonometry did an interview with a young lady who had been, one of these 250,000 victims, a white woman from the UK who had been violated by these Pakistani R-word gangs throughout her childhood. And, a part of that which stuck with me was how when she came for help, when she asked those around her for help, the adults in her life, she was labeled as being a Pakistani basher, as being intolerant and hating these people. And I saw right through that because, I get that. I on a daily basis, I'm either called a salad or this or that, different things. Shaming language to shut me up doesn't work. But for so many out there, it might. And so, I ask you this. Would you rather be seen by those around you as something that you're not? Or would you rather stand on the side of truth? There was a point where that man right there was damn near alone. But he was still right. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there. Or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace. Aquarius. I've been up for hours, I've been up for days, yeah. Staring at the ceiling, I've been counting strays, yeah. I've been in my feelings, I've been out of mind. I've been getting visions of the other kind. Yeah, I've been up for weeks. I'm in the counting blessings over counting sheep. I can never be the type to limit when it comes to me. I used to be the pleaser for the people